really about how technology can help reduce injuries for teams. So we also have a remote speaker, Theo, but over here, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself one by one, and then I'll go over to Theo. So maybe, Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure thing. Dan Burns, VP of Partnerships at Escape.
Hey everybody, Dr. Mark Nunez, performance athletic trainer, independent contractor.
Kevin Martin, I'm with QuickBoard. It's a agility training and rehabilitation platform.
Melanie Pauli, I'm working for the Swiss Federation Soccer, but the women's side as an athletic coach and strength and conditioning.
Hello, this is Manuel Fernandez, PhD in sports science, co-founder of Thermohuman, so temperature for prevention and fatigue identification.
I'm Tony Berruti. I'm the CEO of Betterguards Technology. It's the first and only adaptive ankle brace focused on injury prevention and performance innovation.
Well, thank you, Tony. And then also we have Theo on the line. So Theo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Great. Hi everyone, I'm Theo Bastig, PhD in physiotherapy. I'm developer of the Topspin 360. It's a method of dynamic neuromuscular neck training to mitigate concussion and neck injury risk.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to go about, and I didn't say prevent injuries, right? Because I think many years ago, there's a couple of companies say, hey, we're going to help you prevent injuries. Nobody can prevent injuries. So, and now people start talking about reducing athlete injuries. So my first question is, how important is it for teams to reduce athlete injuries? So maybe, Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure thing. You hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go. I think it's probably the biggest priority of any organization. I think when you look at the health of a business and a team, it's directly related to the health of the athletes that are on the field. Athletes fill up the stadium, athletes sell merchandise, more wins means more opportunities to negotiate for better TV rights, which means better contracts for the athletes. So I'd imagine from an outsider looking in, that is the top priority of every organization from the top down, is how can we get the most out of our players.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Maybe Marco, you want to go next?
Ditto on what you just said. I mean, working in the NBA at the end of every year, and I'm sure the NFL, Major League Baseball, anywhere you go, there's always a report that comes out that kind of identifies how much money is lost for every player that's not on the court, or how many games missed, or anything of that sort. So at the end of the day, it eventually comes down to money. I mean, everything comes down to money. It is what it is. But I think that's like you mentioned, one of the number one priorities to keep the athletes healthy. But not only just keep them healthy, keep them on the court, and then I think the second involves is that if they do get hurt, to try to reduce that risk of re-injury when they are returning.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. Kevin?
I don't want to keep saying the same thing that they're saying. They've pointed out, the most important factors, but at the same time, I think there's some other things that teams, staffs, pay attention to, and that's like we heard about on other panels, is the early sports specialization, which creates a huge challenge. And in terms of what these staffs have to face and address with these athletes, in order to prevent those injuries.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Mel?
Yeah, I think everything was said, but in terms if we put out the money also to protect the players and to try to help them to stay long on the court, but also to educate them to be better athletes, especially in the team sports, because they don't have the same mindset in the individual sports. And I think in the perspective also by the women, where the money at the moment is rising, but still has no resource or some stuff like that, really to educate them and to protect them and to show them that it's really important how to work well to be at least a long-term pro athlete. I think it's really important.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Ismail, so from your perspective, as far as using tomography, how important is it?
So just to be a little bit controversial, obviously, and not repeating what everyone has said, just highlighting that what is obvious is prevention is a key for institutions professional. But as a sports scientist and also co-founder of a technology, which is working with a lot of different teams. And what is surprising is sometimes the theory is clear, but on the practice, you see that prevention is potentially not a priority. And it's hard to accept that. But even if everything that has been said is true, sometimes facing the reality and also it should be understood the competition context and pressure is not always a priority.
Yeah, thank you, Ismail. Tony?
The greatest ability is availability. And interestingly enough, with our technology, we've been published twice in the American Journal of Sports Medicine. My chief scientific officer is here. Our technology, we're part of the NBA Launchpad in 2022. And what's really interesting is that looking at ankle injuries, which we know are probably the biggest challenge in the NBA amongst many other sports, 200 million ankle injuries a year. With our technology, we can prevent up to 80% of ankle injuries from happening by wearing it. Most people think about braces as something that happens afterwards. Our mission is to try to make it a non-negotiable piece of sports equipment that can help prevent the injury from ever happening. Because it's inevitable, 15% of NBA injuries are ankle, accounts for over half the missed time, and with our technology, we're really working to try and prevent that from happening.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And I'm going to ask Theo. So Theo, from your perspective, maybe you can explain what's your product, and so how important is it to reduce injuries?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the fellow panelists have already highlighted it, and I always like the phrase "the best ability equals availability," and I add that, but I agree fully. It's interesting that injury risk reduction it's the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to performance enhancement, and I think that when teams really do adopt that and understand it, as the other panelist said, is that a lot of times it gets lip service, but it's actually not the priority, because if it is, then they would see results on the field with regards to performance and championships.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. So my next question is more about challenges, right? You've got some great technology vendors, right? They're trying to have the teams adopt the technology, but what are the challenges, right, in the context of a team to help reduce injuries, right? Anybody has any thoughts as far as challenges to help to reduce? Maybe sometimes, you might have a team that have a great technology, and the technology will say, look, if you play the guy on the next game, there's a higher chance of injury. But then the head coach say, look, I'm going to let this guy play no matter what, right? So, for example, what are the challenges you think teams are facing, right, to help to reduce injuries? Anybody?
I'll jump in first. In terms of the biggest challenges is, you have all these technologies, right? Like here. And, one, a staff has to filter through, what are they going to bring in? What did they use this year? What didn't work? Are we going to keep everything? So there's that challenge, but then there's also taking in all that data in their athlete management system and then making decisions on that. So, it's awesome. I mean, obviously my company is a technology company, but at the same time, I get the pain points that you can only do so much, and it's going to be hard to filter through what's best for that team situation and where they are. So, collecting the data, time is of the essence. So everybody's, on a limited schedule, and so they have to find, that magic formula where it's the right technologies, and then can they make informed decisions with that?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I'll chime in. I think with a lot of the new technologies that have been coming out the last couple of years, teams have been trialing things out, right? And I think what's going on and what people like most about a locker room setting and the team and the staff that are there is the trust level, right? I mean, people trust the staff. They trust the individuals that are showing up every day. They trust the people that are looking out for their best interests. So I think to be able to trust a new technology and have a whole team on the same page and aligned to move forward with a single product or technology solution is important. And everybody should be involved in that decision. We're getting more data. The market's getting more competitive, which just means better products are starting to emerge and favorites amongst organizations and teams are starting to emerge. So I think it's just a matter of time. Trust takes time, and technology is new to the space.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Marco?
Yeah, I think it depends on the size of your team or how many athletes you have and how many positions. I think one of the biggest challenges is trying to find one device, one technology that's going to be able to prevent or reduce the risk of injuries for all your athletes. So if you're playing American football, obviously it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. You're going to have quarterbacks that have probably shoulder issues that you have to address that part. You're going to have wide receivers, explosive athletes that do the explosive movement. They probably have more of the soft tissue injuries, which is more like hamstring injuries. But then if you refer to like basketball that you mentioned, ankle sprains and any sport that involves plyometrics, ankle sprains is probably the number one. Soft tissue injuries is the second one. So trying to assess, trying to find one thing that kind of fits for everybody on your team. And I think that's going to be very difficult to do.
Yeah. Anybody else before I jump on the next question? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Theo.
Sure, yeah. I was just going to say, I think, from our perspective, the challenges lumped into two distinct categories. One is effectiveness of the approach, technology, or what have you, at mitigating those injuries. And secondly is measurement and effective objective metrics that can quantify that potential future injury risk or rehabilitation quality. So I think those are, the third challenge would be for sports scientists to be able to discern what is objective, meaningful data that is indicative of someone's potential injury risk and rehabilitation potential.
Yeah, thank you, Theo, because I feel like sometimes the team gets so much data, it's hard to kind of see what's important, what's not, right? So, yeah go ahead, Ismail.
I would like to highlight other two important points that obviously are not for all disciplines, for example, soccer and other sports. One is obviously a schedule that is each year more congested because more competitions. So reducing the time of recovery is putting more pressure on athletes. So prevention is key, but people, so professionals and athletes, are struggling. And the second is very important for all of us. We all know that even if a team is employing and using the best technology with the best professionals, I didn't never see a camera scoring a goal, right? Yeah. So at the end of the day, even if you are doing everything okay, in sometimes, some contexts, some disciplines, the result is key, and that is obviously influencing if a methodology, a technology is further used.
Yeah, thank you, Ismail. Tony?
I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective here, but when I think about challenges, I'm in a place of privilege having world-class technology, but there's still challenges getting it introduced because we've all been saying it's such a competitive landscape. There's so many new technologies coming out there. We have an advisor, Kiki Lyles, Marco, you might know him, and he said that within the NBA trainer in the rooms, it takes 3 years for a technology to be adopted. So we might have the best technology, we believe we do, but to have somebody like Marco trust it to put it onto a player when the standard has been taping or other braces or this type of stuff, it takes a long time to make sure that they trust it before they're going to put it onto a player. So even I can sit here and tell you about how great our technology is. I believe that, obviously, but actually getting the adoption of it is something that, and I'm totally sympathetic to the trainers, right? Because they're putting this on athletes that have tens of millions of dollars of contracts. So they need to do all of their due diligence to make sure that it's trusted before they're going to go ahead and put anything on any athlete because it's their reputation on the line as well.
No, for sure. I mean, some guys, I remember one of my buddies used to work for Real Madrid. He was working for Zinedine Zidane. New job, right? And they had so many injuries. And the media had this page, like, he's the reason why they had so many injuries. 6 months later, no more injuries, and they were saying, like, he's the scientist, So, I think people are very quick to judge, right? Hey, my next question is more about, how important have technology become to help reduce injuries? And if you guys have any kind of success stories of, I know, for example, Ismail, right? You work with lots of teams, you publish statistics about, reduction, injuries. So, number one, how important is technologies to reduce injuries? And then number two, any success stories that you guys can share that you have come across? And maybe I'll start with Theo. So Theo, what is your take on that?
Sure. So, like our device, Topspin 360, as mentioned, method of dynamic neuromuscular neck training. Success stories. We've been, I guess, very fortunate. We've had multiple teams who have adopted us, fully trained on it, and had 0 concussion seasons. And this is across women's soccer, women's volleyball, men's volleyball, as well as football, like American football. The one story that I guess comes to mind for me would be the Citadel, which the only reason they have a women's volleyball team at all because a woman wanted to attend back in the 90s, this all-male institution, and it went all the way to Supreme Court. Supreme Court said, yes, you've got to let her in. As soon as they let one female attend this institution, it opened them up to Title IX. So within 2 years, they fabricated 7 women's sports programs where they didn't even have women's change rooms on campus. Women's volleyball was a very cheap sport for them to do, which they did. They were the worst team in the Southern Conference for 20 years running. And in 2018, they had 8 concussions on a team of 13 players. They started training our device in 2018 and 2019. They went to 0 concussions in 2019, 0 in 2020, 0 in 2021, and they won the Southern Conference Championship. And now this year, they were one of only 2 undefeated teams in the entire NCAA women's volleyball sport, the other one being the number 1 ranked Nebraska Huskers. And so right now they've won their title for the second time for a team that was perpetually the worst team, not only in Southern Conference, but they were ranked one of the worst teams in the NCAA for that reason. So it's a pretty exciting success story for us.
Yeah, I think it's a great, it speaks to the technology that you guys provide, right? It's a pretty amazing story. So anybody wants to comment on my questions? Yeah.
So yeah, just mentioning in the case of thermography, it has been studied mainly in countries like Brazil. Ourselves as a research group, we have been describing the drops in muscle injuries over different seasons with and without technology between 63 and 74%. Those are the results. But what is funny just to mention as an anecdote, in most of the cases, speaking about the successful stories, is, as I told you, I'm a PhD. I was just starting the project as a researcher, going to teams. And in most of the cases, I was the guy of the camera, just come in with the, this kind of researcher. So obviously we were using the technology, and if in most of the cases, that was successful because we were pointing out risk. Obviously, no one was paying attention, and then they were getting injuries with people where we say they were at risk. And normally, this is the normal path of trusting technology and then adopting it into a normal methodology. And
maybe Ismail, if you can explain for like 10 seconds, what is thermography? So that people understand.
Actually, I was just showing you this camera, okay? So thermography is just something that you have seen in airports, and it's useful to measure skin temperature. So the same way anyone is using a thermometer to detect if he has fever, we map the body and we measure the skin temperature so we can detect imbalances that can be useful for prevention and also fatigue identification. So actually, the point here is, in some of cases, all technologies that has been shown here, obviously, we are under the radar and just being analyzed by the teams about the validity, how useful is that, and in that process, successful cases are, as you were mentioning, 3 years. I was starting in 2009, so in my case, it took a longer time, right? But it's always tough, but it is at the same time very, let's say, funny to go through this process.
Anybody wants to comment on the importance of technology and any success stories? Yeah, Mel? Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my point of perspective, working with the women's side in soccer, it is to take care of the more technology help us to be more aware about the women physiology and trying to be more tracking also this menstrual cycle and seeing, okay, what kind of strategy we can develop in terms of injury reduction, but also in terms of making a better load management and also better nutrition and being more aware of the body of the players. And for us at this point, we can't say because we are we are using this technology, we have less injury at this point because it's still 1 year and a half, 2 years that we are working like this. So we need a little more consistently, but because of this, our player are more aware, and also if my player, because of some strategy, because I'm using the technology, helping them to feel better, to be better, automatically they will perform better and train better. And that's the point. If it's like my key player, I don't care if it's just 2% better of her performance or whatever. I know she will be better on this day, where is the key game, then I take it. So if I can amount it with 11 players on the court, so on the field, so it will help. But at this point, we can't say this. We want to know directly. Okay, if I use this technology, what is the result in terms of performance and what is the usefulness of? Oh, it is useful to use it, but I think we have to be consistently. We speak about it before. What is the best technology for me or for my organization at this point, and trying on the long term to see, okay, how I can use it to help my player to reduce injury.
Yeah, well, I think I guess the biology or the physiology, right, of female athletes is also very different, right? So last question, right? So we talked about what is, I guess, injury reduction and challenges and all that. Where do you guys see the world of injury reduction evolving, right? 24 months from now? Like, I remember a famous quote from the commissioner of the NBA, who passed away. He basically had a quote saying, look, I see a world where I've got one of my coaches on the sideline, one of the NBA players who has a patch measure dehydration, and having the ability to know, hey, this guy's getting dehydrated. It's time to make change the guy, bring a new guys in. I mean, look, is that really, where do you see the future, I guess 2 years from now, as far as injury reduction?
So it's kind of interesting. We're talking about technology and using technology to reduce the risk of injury. And I guess there's different areas, different factors. You can do like long-term technology where you do the research study, kind of collect the data. You can do short-term, or you can do immediate results, like you're talking about the sweat analysis that if the athlete is dehydrated type of thing. So I guess every team has to determine, what level, what kind of technology, what they want to do, whether they want to do more the long-term studies, short-term, or immediate. Prime example, like you're talking about the sweat analysis. One quick success story that I think that I had, and I don't know if it's a success story, but I was in China in 2019, and I had taken some shorts out there that had some EMG sensors embedded in them. The team allowed me to put it onto their top 5 athletes, and so they're playing a scrimmage game. They're going up and down, and I'm monitoring all these athletes. And it tracks their movement, it tracks their load, not only their overall load, but any discrepancy load between the right leg and the left leg. Obviously, some are more right leg dominant than the left type thing, but I was noticing that the point guard was starting to lean more towards one area of the leg, more towards the right leg. I asked the coach if he could pull them out. I asked him, hey, what's going on? Immediately he told me, hey, you know what? My left groin is starting to feel really tight on that part. So pulled him out. We did some releases, corrected his pelvis. He kind of went back in there. Now, did I reduce the risk of injury? Did I prevent an injury? I don't know. It's just basically be able to identify any risk of injuries, any discrepancies, any discrepancy patterns that you're kind of looking at, and try to correct it or reduce it. And hopefully, by doing that, you do reduce the risk of injury.
Yeah, thank you. Before I get into you guys, Theo, where do you see the world evolving as far as injury reduction 2 years from now?
Yeah, I think in 2 years, what you'll tend to see is that the teams that recognize the problem and actually place this as the highest priority will be the teams that go on to be most successful. And that, sports is a war of attrition, and championships are played at the end of the season, not at the beginning. So the teams that stay the healthiest, the longest, will win. And the teams that put this as a priority and objectively monitor and measure and put injury prevention or risk mitigation as the highest priority will have the best results, because as previously discussed, best ability equals availability, and that no more pressing than in championships at the end of the season.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. Dan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think there we go. I think on my end, I think it's been interesting to watch the competitive landscape. It's very fragmented when it comes to the different companies and technologies that are being presented and offered to the different teams. I think over the next couple of years, out of necessity, some of the ones that are going to start to emerge are going to have to partner together to streamline communication, real-time reporting to the partners, and make it much simpler to make decisions in real time and put together programs to make sure that athletes can stay on the field as long as possible. Like we were talking about, who's hydrated, who's not. Did somebody have a minor injury during the game? Do we need them to get a massage after the game? Is there a different type of technology they should use? What type of protocol should they be on the next couple weeks? As opposed to collecting and gathering that data.
And by the way, the example I gave from David Stern, today you can still not kind of put a wearable device on an NBA player during game. So until that's done, and the NBA wearable committee allows that, that would never happen, right? So hopefully it happens soon, right? Anybody?
Yeah, I think the limitation on that front is going to be, like you said, the players' organizations, what you're going to be allowed to collect, what they want you to collect. But at the same time, with the new hardware technologies coming out, I think very feasible within 24 months. You're going to have, less analysis that's demanded of the staffs. Even a decision that they'll be informed, should be made by looking at the numbers. But even beyond that, this is probably well past 24 months. But you even have with this generative AI, based on everything that's being collected.
So you're big on generative AI, ChatGPT? I'm joking.
Not near what most people are, but
Yeah.
It'll actually give them ideas what they need to be looking at. They may be looking over here, whereas they need to look here. It may even say you should be collecting data on this, and there may not even be a technology that exists and provides insights into technology that needs to be developed.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Ismail?
Yeah, so I would like to point out that I think that I don't know if it's a wish or it's really what is going to happen, but I think that the main point for the future application in the next 2 years is going to be to, let's say, explore further the integration of different technologies. Because, for example, my company is very specialized in temperature, which is great, but at the end of the day, it's just another tool, another piece of the puzzle. So potentially here we see different technologies, different specialties, but what the power of technology is into the integration of different variables to see the real weight of each one, in that case for prevention and working together. So platforms, algorithms, working with that objective is something that I see as something that's going to happen in the, let's say, midterm.
Yeah, I said 2 years, could be 5 years, right? So, hey, Tony, do you have your comment?
Yeah.
Thanks, Emil.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, just the themes across everybody here with AI. And I just think the amount of data that we're going to have, there's going to be so many more insights that's just going to unlock new findings that we don't even comprehend yet. And that's going to be really interesting. Just the other point that I think is a theme here is just the conglomeration of collaboration. Creative collaborations from hardware to software to physical products to how that could be then translated into insights that are going to help performance and prevention of injury. My hope, though, is also that there's a democratization of this technology so that there's greater access to people who are not NBA players and NFL players, but just to the masses, because I think it really starts with a lot of the youth, and there's not everybody has the same access to everything. So I hope there's ways in which we can also evolve that and think about how everybody should have the access to the tools that are going to keep them healthy and on the field as long as possible.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Any other feedback before I open the Q&A? No? So do you guys have any questions? Yeah?
I guess for Dr. Nunez and Melanie as the athletic trainers, let's say there's new technology that comes out. We know there's a body of research that should follow that over the next, however long research takes to develop and get out there. What would there be in the short term as that research develops that would help to convince you evaluating a new product that maybe an athlete comes to you with and says, hey, I just heard about this from somebody. what are you looking for? Something that would lend you to say, yeah, that I do want you to try that. You know, I know it's outside the scope of what I'm doing with you now, but I actually do want you to give this a shot because I'm saying X, Y, and Z with it.
I mean, everything that we have that we use or I would use in the past or currently use would have to be research based or validated. But having said that, even though there's plenty of research, just because there's research on it doesn't mean it's a one size fits all. I've used devices, for example, shockwave therapy, a big component of shockwave therapy. I've used it with all our athletes for soft tissue injuries. I've had incredible results with all of them, but there's been a few that for some reason no results happen. So I think even with research data kind of stays on their part. Obviously the research validation is probably the number one thing that kind of gets through the door. Obviously, working with professional athletes, it's hard, and obviously it's kind of difficult to just go based on just complete case studies and have somebody walk into the door and say, hey, try this new product, there's no research on it. If I'm being completely honest, and the other direct sports medicine that work there for teams, if I do that and put in an athlete and something goes wrong, something else is going to go wrong on that part type of thing. So it's kind of tough when it comes in that part. But at the same time, nowadays most teams have minor league teams. With the NBA, we have G League teams that we can actually utilize to kind of see how we can be able to implement those with our players.
Thank you, Marco.
Yeah, for me, is in the short term, it's more like, again, in which kind of organization you are and what you have already in the disposition, what you need already, what you use already. Because there is a lot of, I think this in Switzerland when we are speaking about, okay, we are training now more, trying to train oriented to the menstrual cycle and so on, and coming the football club or the soccer clubs to me and saying, oh, now we want to train like cycle oriented, and I'm like, okay, you didn't understand what is it. Are you already making like injury reduction program? Are you consistently using your pre-warm-up or your stuff like? And they said no. So I said begin with that. So don't begin to use technology first if you don't make the base. And I think it's really important to see, okay, where I am, what I already use, and be convinced I'm like this. I have to be convinced or to try, okay, it can help me to enhance my player, to help my player to be fit and to perform at this day. So I want to try this. And also, if there is, specifically in women's sports, there is a lot of gap in the study. And if I'm waiting about the science-based, I will be here in 20 years again. So I have to try, and I have to. But first, as a practitioner, I have to be convinced that this technology that you sell me, that it's good for me to help my players, and then I will try it. And I think it's more like about, okay, prioritizing what you need, in which organization, which budget you have, and what will help you first, step by step.
Thanks, Mel. Any other feedback? Anybody else? You guys have any questions? Where's it going?
This might be a controversial question, but it'll come back around to tech. In a world where we see a lot of injury prevention programming exists and research is supporting it, but compliance is pitiful, and we don't see effective use of those programs to help reduce injury, how do you see technology, which maybe is what some people have used to get away from some of those tried and true programming efforts, actually come back around and help us to reinforce some of those programs that have been validated to help reduce injury? So again, maybe an anti-tech question that then how could we use tech to make that less anti-tech?
Yeah. So I mean, it sometimes the KISS principle is the best method, something that you've utilized for years and years, and it's a work type of thing. But I think when it comes to technology, and oftentimes the reason why I use technology is basically just either to validate what kind of treatment or rehab that I'm kind of doing with our athletes type of thing, and it's just kind of tracking them or monitoring their progression. Or in some cases, you use it to monitor their regression. And if they are regressing, whether it's in a rehab program, whether it's in a strength and conditioning program, using all this information to validate what you're doing or modify the program if you need to And at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of the objective data that we're using is just basically utilized to justify the reason whether an athlete is ready to return to the field or not. You know, the old subjective methods of, hey, how do you feel? Kick the tire, you feel great, all right, let's go ahead and do it. But doesn't mean that they're not going to get injured. It doesn't. It just kind of helps the staff members and the sports medicine staff justify, okay, based on the data that we've collected objectively, looks like their risk of injury is reduced. Doesn't mean it goes to zero. It's just reduced.
If I can kind of chime in to help answer the question as well, one of the issues is you're right. Like there are effective injury risk reduction programs. The FIFA 11 Plus is a classic example. It's highly effective when you do it at least 2 to 3 times a week for a period of months. However, it's monotonous, it's boring, it takes 20 minutes each time, and coaches have a hard time justifying doing this 20-minute program each and every time when there's no way to objectively measure while they're doing it, if they're doing it any better or worse. And the players just get bored as well. It's like, oh my God, the same warm-up, 20 minutes, 3 times a week. This is just dull. So one of the challenges that need to be overcome is, you're right, the adherence and the compliance. And one of the ways is to have an objective measure that the athletes can see, hey, am I getting any better at this or not? Where am I standing, and how does that objectively quantify and compare to my future injury risk? So I think the 2 big challenges are time. It's got to be time efficient. 2, it's got to be objectively measurable. And 3, it's got to be effective.
And I'll throw in on the technology aspect. You know, with the QuickBoard, you know, that's what we do. One, we keep it simple. You know, we don't bear people with data. Andrea Hootie was one of our first customers, and what she likes about it is the simplicity. It provides them real-time movement feedback that motivates them during exercises, but at the same time, they're also collecting data. So after the fact, they're able to see, you know, are they compensating one side versus the other during, you know, speed-focused exercises, or during reaction exercises? Are they compensating, you know, on one side versus the other because they're taking longer to react to on one side? And you know, so again, it can be fully automated as well. And you know, unfortunately, nowadays, or maybe fortunately, that, you know, athletes want engaging interventions, and so we try to keep that in mind, you know, with our technology and future development.
All right, thanks, Julian. So my first question is from Mel, and then I've got a question for the group. So Mel, my question for you is, in using technologies to monitor women's health, have you encountered any syndromes or disorders that are unique to women, like endometriosis? And if so, what do you do about it? And then for the group in general, my question is going to be, how do you deal with the situations where, like, I work in the Olympic and Paralympic movement. I've encountered coaches, especially in decentralized sports, who are resistant to functional movement screens and other things that can prevent injury because it freaks out the athlete if they're told that they're not perfect, and it affects their performance in competition. So, yeah, we'll start with Mel's question, and then for the group, the second question would be great.
Yeah, because we use this technology and track, and we saw a bunch of different stuff inside of the team and inside of the girls also were more aware about, oh, yeah, that's happened to me also. But endometriosis, we didn't have a case, but we have case that we saw girls who had low energy availability. We had girls who just get their cycle when they had the break. That was normal for them, and there was a lot of different stuff we saw, and we could take strategy and making implement some strategy to help them. And what we observe is that it's helped. It's helped our player. They feel better. It's not mean that's because of this we will be world champion. Not, but we give all the possibility to the player to perform at her best. So yeah, it helped.
Thanks, Mel. Any other feedback? No? Ismail, real quick.
Answering to your question, I have experience because obviously I have worked with a lot of different institutions in disciplines. Regarding your second question, I have seen teams showing and being very transparent on the results. So performing the data collection, showing right away the results, and other ones that are just not hiding, but obviously keeping internally. For me, is the piece of art of managing the information that depends on in that case, performance or medical department. And I don't think it's just depending on the culture, but let's say the mindset of each professional.
All right, so that's it. I want to thank all the panelists today. So thank you guys. We're gonna have a quick break, and then after that, a panel